I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker, who's a friend of mine. He is a fellow crazy person, as I like to say, because he is an idea person. We've spent the last probably 10 years working together on mass timber. It was not an easy process. We spent a lot of kind of late nights putting together pitch decks to support him and his adventure of encouraging Jamestown to use mass timber. And we've been, I think, creatively aligned ever since then. So Troy Harris is the Managing Director of Timberland and Innovative Wood Products at Jamestown. He's been doing that for a hot second. He's an expert there, and we're glad to have him today. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Troy Harris.
I thought you had everybody's pictures and you didn't even use them. We've had a little bit of problem with the, that'll work. Well, good morning. I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, and I really just love, as I looked at the roster today, about who is here and who is attending. I think it just speaks loudly about the interest of mass timber, and kind of fits into my background, because I think we've got foresters to construction people, sawmill people, developers, architects, engineers. I think the fire chief may be here or may be coming or something. I don't know. So those are all really important things to this industry, and I love that everybody's here. As Matt said, Troy Harris, Managing Director of Jamestown. I'm going to wear a couple hats today, as I kind of alluded to, anyways. In this storytelling of 619 Ponce and our journey on Seedlings to Solutions and how we got Georgia's first farm-to-table mass timber building in downtown Atlanta. And I'll be wearing a forester's hat because I am a forester and a proud graduate of Auburn University. Oh, I got one. And then I'll cover and say I also got an MBA at Georgia, so I also am a dog, and sometimes the forestry school honors me and counts me as one of their own sometimes. So I appreciate that greatly. But I love being here and everything. But when I speak to audiences, especially kind of the one today, I'm usually representing the forester in the room. And if you're going to build mass timber buildings and you're going to love this story and you think about what we're doing, I spent a lot of time over the last few years with our project, and why we did our project was literally to take the question off the table that usually when I talk to architects, developers, and they start exploring mass timber, this is great, this is a beautiful building, it's what I want to do, and then they get the question, it used to be fire, what about fire? And I think we've put that one to bed a little bit, but the second important question is, well, if I build with mass timber, I'm going to destroy the rainforest, and I don't want to be part of that. Or I'm going to be cutting old growth timber, and I don't want to be part of that. And so what we've tried to do, and I think what we've really done within the state and the foundation and great projects like Woodworks, is educate people that forestry has a great sustainability story that we can be proud of, and I think we can speak confidently and should be able to speak confidently and answer investors' questions and people that want to build with mass timber, that this is a good thing and here's why. And so I think we want to kind of help you tell that story and understand that story. If you understand my story and working at Jamestown as the developer, Jamestown is we own Ponce City Market in downtown Atlanta. How many people have been to Ponce City Market? It's not like I was hoping to everybody, but so what is important about that part of our journey and how we landed with a mass timber building in downtown Atlanta is that as a developer, sustainability has been in our roots for a long time. We're known for some really great buildings around the country. One of our first was Chelsea Market in downtown, or in New York City, that is now owned by Google and the Google campus. It's very similar to the concept of Ponce City Market, which is in downtown Atlanta. We own Ghirardelli in San Francisco. But what's important about these buildings is they're all what we call adaptive reuse. And if you think about buildings and the built environment, which I think a lot of people in this audience kind of understand, and you're also thinking about sustainability, and you're talking about lowering carbon footprints, you've got to understand the overarching thing here about what makes mass timber so compelling to lots of people is that if you think about the global emissions, 40% of our global emissions are coming from the built environment. So where we work, where we live, where we play, 40% of emissions. So that's a huge part of solving the equation of lowering carbon emissions, right? If you think about that, 11% of that is what we build with. And so if we have the opportunity to change the way that we build and substitute mass timber, wood products that are sustainably grown and managed, if you can substitute that for traditional building materials like concrete and steel, then you have a real opportunity to lower the carbon footprint and actually make something that's really interesting. And so that was compelling to us, and we were thinking about how we do that. That was already in our DNA, because the best way to lower your carbon footprint on a building is to recycle it, and that's what adaptive reuse is. So doing great projects like Ponce City Market in downtown Atlanta, the trade-off would have been just level that sucker, take all that stuff to the dump and landfill, and start over. And that probably would have been easier, but it doesn't create a space that we find compelling, unique, quirky, but it's the kind of space people want to be in, and we believe in that very strongly, that having a place that's different is really cool. I'd argue, this is a good example, the one that we're in right now, of adaptive reuse, where we've taken something old, reimagined it, and boy, doesn't it feel cool. And it's kind of cool to be in a original mass timber building. I thought that was very appropriate, so nice job, Matt. I think that was probably intentional. But that's how we got to where we are and stuff. And so, what I think that some of us have already kind of alluded to and stuff in the sustainability story, what we did through some grants and some funding through U.S. Forest Service and the Georgia Forestry Foundation and other things, is that we decided that we were going to build this building using our own timber and our own timberland. I manage a bunch of timberland in the state of Georgia and Alabama, and we're all in this industry, so we're like, let's do it farm to table, let's single source it to take all of the questions off the table about where your building comes from. Let's show people where it comes from. You got to understand, again, background on that, where does our wood come from? And if you think about it, Matt put up some illustrations about the state of Georgia and how the state of Georgia plays out. Same kind of concepts with the U.S. 67% of the forests in the United States are owned by what we call private working forests. A lot of those are people that are basically with the intention of managing their forests. The other side of the equation that people kind of get confused are federal forests. Those are the parks and the recreation. People are used to being in those places, and they kind of get the two mixed up. But if you look at the working forests, and I don't know why my slide looks like that, but because there are actually lots of interesting numbers up there. If you look at the working forest, 90% of the products and wood products that we consume every day, whether that's lumber or diapers or toilet paper or boxes from Amazon, 90% is that coming from working forests, people who are intentionally out there growing a crop, if you will. Those forests are very healthy and growing very vigorously, so they actually sequester more carbon because they're being well taken care of than some of the other forests. And if you're thinking about how that impacts, the concept of, we're going to destroy the rainforest, that's not what's happening. We're only using about 2% of our forest annual cut on an annual basis. And the whole point of that is we replant, reforest, and start the cycle over again. That has huge implications to sustainability in the way that the world works. Sorry, we're also having difficulties. And so what we wanted to do when we got this crazy idea of like let's build a building and let's do it locally, was to tell our story and explain the supply chain to people so people understood how it worked. And so in the kind of the concept in the ways most people understand, and if you've ever built a home or you understand that construction, you know that it starts in the forest, we grow the trees, they are sequestering carbon dioxide's getting locked up in those trees, ultimately they get harvested, that wood in that tree basically gets locked away, all that carbon was being stored in that lumber. That lumber gets made into things, usually lumber and forest products. And my guys at Boise Cascade would understand that concept really well. But what the industry doesn't know, and the piece of the pie that we have not talked about, is how does the mass timber industry and how does mass timber inflate? So we basically have created this large circular supply chain to tell people and demonstrate to people how did we build a building in downtown Atlanta. So you got to start off with the forests, right? And this is what I'm usually talking about and answering questions as a forester in the room. But obviously, we have foresters in the room, so people can help me out here. But you've got to go back to the basics, and you've got people out in the woods taking care of those forests. And what foresters don't do really well is talk to people. They became foresters because they want to be out in the woods. They want to be alone. They don't want to be in downtown Atlanta. They don't want to be speaking in Athens about what they do, but they love it and they're passionate about it. So you got to understand that the cycle starts with foresters doing good work out in the woods and taking really good care of the trees. Now, Matt also alluded to the concept that people, kind of conceptually think about forests and what plantation forestry and everything, but we also have a lot of natural areas. And as forest managers who are growing a crop that takes 25 years to grow, we're managing all kinds of things holistically. And so this is us filming down on our forest right next to the Chattahoochee River. And so as you're thinking about forests and what they provide us as the environment, not only are they providing us a carbon solution and cleaning our air, but you've got to understand also that lots of water is falling on those forests and they're filtering the water. And when floods happen, floods are going onto our forest and then they're receding. So forests in general are a big solution to a lot of our problems. And if we're taking care of them and managing them well, the result is we get better water quality. Along with that, we also get a very diverse, biodiversity and habitat. So we're housing and homing a lot of critters out there and taking care of a lot of those things. We're providing a lot of rural jobs. And so if you think about all the things that come into the end product of not just a mass timber building, there's a bigger picture here that keeping forests, having them healthy, having them growing, creates a lot of societal benefits as well, which becomes really important and compelling to the mass timber story of what you want to be talking to the people that you're working for as developers, designers, architects. This is a huge part of our story that we've learned that people want to know and understand. And so storytelling and understanding why you built this building with mass timber becomes really important. So you need to understand your supply chain. Again, people taking care of the woods. Our story gets kind of fun. We talked to Larry Grace. Larry Grace is retired now as a forester, but as we were harvesting the 26-year-old timber to do this project off of our land, somebody said, hey, I think Larry Grace managed that land, and he's with the firm that we still use today. And so we get to talk to Larry Grace about how he planted these trees in 1926 and what that means to his story and what forestry means to him. I think this is kind of who are the people in your neighborhood part of the discussion. But you got to understand, his background and how he's put an entire career into this. Sorry, I took my first allergy pill this morning and a little dry. We do cut trees. That's an important part of our business. People don't like that part of our business when they're used to looking at a forest for 20 years and then all of a sudden it's gone. They get reactions and stuff. But we want to talk about that because that's the real part of it. Along the way, we get to meet Miss Kim Woodall. Miss Kim runs a logging company called Evergreen, and I've been working with Miss Kim and Evergreen most of my career. Great company, great loggers out there. But you get to learn about Miss Kim and her, over $2 million investments in logging equipment, trucks, employees, and how that affects her and her rural community and how that trickles down. And so some of these things that come up along the way are just fun. Most of y'all have probably seen a log truck, but just in case you didn't, this is how we get it to the mill. Basically, we load it up on the logging deck. And in our case, we marked the load with a big Jamestown J because what we did, which makes our building very unique and special, is that we single sourced this building. We wanted to create that farm to table concept where you could say we knew where those trees were coming from exactly. Now, being a landowner and manager, that was something very special that we could do, and we did know the supply chain. And so next step, we call our good friends at Georgia Pacific. Sorry, guys. We would have called you next, honestly. My Boise Cascade guys. So we call our good friends at Georgia Pacific, whose headquarters are in downtown Atlanta, and said, hey, we want to do this project. Will you do something crazy with us? And they agreed. They thought it was great. They thought it was great for telling their side of the lumber business and where your trees are coming from as well. But basically, at that point, you take the log, you turned it into just beautiful lumber that everybody knows and sees and understands. I think most of us understand that trees are made into lumber. So that kind of ends the normal cycle of our story. But now we kind of get into the next stage is, okay, how do you take lumber and turn it into a beautiful, building that goes into downtown Atlanta in mass timber? Well, that's disappointing. I don't know what is going on with my slides, but that's not a problem. This slide would show you the interesting thing, and I think one of the most compelling parts of our story is that Jamestown, as a developer, we're like, okay, what fits into the character of Ponce City Market? How do we not mess up all the quirkiness and funkiness of Ponce City Market and adaptive reuse? What would match the design? What would keep our things and our sustainability focus going? And we quickly landed on, I'm the forester, I'm like, hey, mass timber, and they're like, what's that? That's where Matt and I were kind of this long journey together. But when we ultimately decided, yes, mass timber fits as a developer, and putting back on my developer hat, we said, okay, let's do a mass timber building. We got everything drawn out, and we went out and put it out for bid, which I think is a mistake, and we'll talk about that later on how you would build a mass timber building, and you should talk to the woodworks people about that. But we thought, oh, it's like concrete, it's like steel. We'll just order up a building, and we did. And there are people that will do that. And so we ordered it up, priced it out, and I get the call from my development team, and they're like, hey, Troy, got the bids back, man. Sorry, we're not doing your Georgia-grown mass timber building. It's cheaper if we buy it from Europe. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, the Europeans are beating us on the prices and stuff like that, so we're going to order that building from Europe, which is, honestly, that's what most people at the time were doing anyways. And I was like, wait, that does not make sense at all. But it does. And here's why. Is that if you look at where is all the mass timber, where are the plants, where's the production, who's making mass timber, you're going to find pretty quickly that the Europeans have been doing this. They've been doing it for a while. They're really good at it. And they have basically about 70% of the plants that make mass timber are located in Europe. They're using sustainable forests in Europe. They've got all the great stories and everything, but they do it well, and they've got the capacity to do it. In the U.S., we don't have as many plants that are making the mass timber. We're lucky now. Dothan, Alabama, locally is probably our closest one that we have locally, and they're the largest now. They doubled their capacity a year or so ago, and are now the largest mass timber producer in the United States, if not North America. I don't know if there's Canadian firms. I don't know if that's true or not, Laura, do you? But I've got people that can actually judge me and call me out in this room, so I can't tell lies and just make stuff up anymore. But the point being is that if you were going to build a mass timber plant, or if you're going to build with mass timber in the United States, my only point to this audience especially is, and you want to do it and you want to have like a local grown story, you have to be very intentional from the start to say, I want to build something and use a U.S. manufacturer. And U.S. wood or North Carolina wood or Georgia wood, that's very important in the concept of if you want to achieve something like we did. It's very doable. You just have to think about it differently. Mass timber is not a commodity. You don't order 2x4s in the same concept that you do for normal construction. So now we got to start telling the story of mass timber. I assume lots of y'all know about mass timber, and that's why you're here, because you're probably further down your journey and stuff. But we do have to do the education on what is mass timber, which is usually a combination of two products. The first being glulam, which become beams and columns for the building. Glulam, all the wood is basically laid in the same direction and glued together in certain components to achieve the desired results for loads and all the things that you're trying to accomplish with that. but it's all kind of glued together and stuck together in the same way. Then you've got CLT, or cross-laminated timber. That's plywood on steroids. So that's taking the same dimensional lumber, finger joining it all together to get longer spans, and then laying it in one direction and then turning it the other direction so that you get stability. And that basically becomes your floors, ceiling type panel of the construction. I think one of the most compelling things to me that we learned about mass timber is that, you know, all of it is done. It's done in a factory controlled environment. That creates lots of rural jobs and opportunities in places where people aren't working, but it significantly changes the way that we build and how we build and efficiencies. And it moves it into controlled environments and safer environments. And I really get excited about that part of the component. When you talk about traditional construction and how traditional construction goes up, it's a lot different. But at the bottom line, the fun thing about mass timber is it becomes like, it is literally like a kit. It's, whether you call it a Lego kit or an IKEA furniture kit, basically all of the pieces and parts are prefabricated off-site so that when they're delivered to the site, they come in and they just go up and put together like a big flat pack of IKEA furniture. And so this is our kit of parts, if you will. That's Luke. I'm 6'1", and Luke is not standing on anything. It's interesting because there's probably other pictures of Luke in the thing, so he makes everything look small. But these are big pieces of mass timber construction. They're wrapped with the Jamestown logo. They're all barcoded so that they go in, and it's very intentional in the way that happens, but it gets kind of laid off site, and when you're ready, you call them and say, I want my mass timber building, please deliver it now. And so here's the first load of our mass timber being delivered to downtown Atlanta on the bed of a flatbed trailer. If you haven't seen Ponce City Market, or you haven't been there, that's Ponce City Market. It gives you an idea of our adaptive reuse project, a huge project, very successful, 3.5 million visitors to Ponce on an annual basis. If Uber is your metric, we're the #1 destination in Atlanta. That has significant implications when you start talking about construction and disruption and parking and logistics. Mass timber has some really compelling parts about that. What we loved about that in this big example here is that this truck can come into Atlanta, Georgia at any time, 24/7. It can come in the middle of the night. It can come in the middle of the afternoon. You can do whatever, and then it backs in, drops that trailer load, and goes away. If you're thinking at the same time we were doing construction with a normal build right next door, sharing the same crane actually, traditional build, concrete and steel, it only took us a little more than 50 tractor trailer loads to build our entire building. In comparison, when we're pouring concrete, you were getting over 50 loads of concrete a day to pour a floor. And those concrete trucks, at least in Atlanta, can only run 9 to 5. So you've got, you know, traffic problems, construction problems when the pump on the crane breaks down, and you've got 30 cement trucks lined up on Ponce de Leon Avenue in downtown Atlanta in the middle of the afternoon or right before rush hour. That's a problem. And so as a developer, we found that this was something we loved that we didn't even know we were going to love. So your timber gets delivered, gets unwrapped. As you can see with this picture, it's prefabricated. It has fasteners on the bottom, so pieces are supposed to go on the top. It's notched. Other pieces will go into that to get that IKEA furniture set. There's Luke juggling the lumber. But at the end of the day, with a crane, it gets lowered into the spot, sits down, and you start building. This leads to really happy construction and development teams. They get happy to see their first building delivered. In our case, you don't get golden shovels, you get golden drills. It's kind of fun. Okay. And then it goes up fast. And so again, like IKEA furniture, it gets stacked and loaded and stuff like that. But as you look at it and the efficiency of the product and what's going up, it comes in, you start building on your first floor. The CLT panels come in, start locking everything down. So you're getting your levels very, very quickly. We're on day 62 at this point, and by day 110, we're topped out, leading to a really, really happy construction and development team, or I'm sorry, construction team. But note that there's only 6 to 8 people working on this team. There's usually probably only about 5 working at a time. 2 of them were women. On the other side of the coin, and the women were the foremen. They'd done these buildings before, so they were teaching the other people how to build. On the other side of our traditional build, 120 people at the same time working on theirs. So significant reduction in workforce. But I also got to point out that if you're on this side of the world in business and safety and you're thinking about things, you've got 5 to 6 people on the work site that are 100% focused on stuff flying over their head, catching it, putting it into place, locking it down, and moving on to the next piece. They're all focused, they're all working together. And I think that has serious implications on safety, because if you're working on the other side and you got 120 people running around and everybody's doing different things, everybody's not focused on important things like heavy stuff flying over their head. So that gives you a good shot. You saw Matt previewed it a little bit, but you get a shot of how big the building is. 4-story, and now is proud home to Pottery Barn on the ground floor, and then Sage, which is a HR software accounting package. Either you know them or you don't, but usually about half the audience knows or uses Sage products for their HR needs, and even if you didn't know it. But they're moved into floor 3 and 4. So we've got those all leased out. There's a shot of Pottery Barn on the inside. I think if you've ever been into a Pottery Barn, very on brand for them, which is fun. I'm going to talk a bit about biophilic design and the way buildings look and feel and make us feel in a picture or two. But one of my favorite stories about Pottery Barn is that a few times a day, people will walk into the store, they'll be shopping around, and they're like, "It smells so good in here. What candle are you burning?" And it gets the chance for the Pottery Barn people who are well-versed, because I give lots of tours and have helped educate them on the story, then they get to go, "You're going to love this. It's not a candle, it's the building." This is Georgia's the #1 forestry state in the nation. See, I got that? And can't have a presentation without that. And this is a farm-to-table building, and they built it with their own timber, and isn't it cool? And then people learn it, and they love it. They're like, okay, now I understand what I'm in. So that's a unique opportunity, but very on brand for Pottery Barn. I think the storytelling is the most important part. If you're going to get great tenants like Pottery Barn in your space, I think what's useful and one of the best practices we learned was have a little fun with it. And so this is a project with Georgia Tech students where we got the architecture engineers to do a little competition. We created a pop-up. This is called the Taurus Arch, and it sits down there right there. If you cannot take 3.5 million people into a mass timber building and educate them on what's going on, that they're looking at going, what is that? Next best thing is to have a pop-up or something fun that people can touch and feel and understand what's going on. Like I said, Taurus Arch. Taurus is a fancy name, architectural. You guys probably know that means tire swing. You guys need more coffee. Or I don't have as many architects in here as I thought. But so anyways, but what the students were genius and whatever the simplicity, but they get to push this thing around. And hopefully, if you haven't ever touched mass timber, you'll come touch this. You'll pick up these blocks, but it's not a 2x4. It's substantial. It's an engineered wood product. And if you push it around a little bit, you go, oh, I guess I can see how that would replace a steel beam. The other thing I think important in today's world that we're living in right now, no matter where your politics are, I think having an advocate and having advocates on the Hill and the support for mass timber, the mass timber industry, we've got a great one here in Georgia. Senator Warnock has become an amazing advocate for us, and so is Senator Ossoff. But I will say this, which is very interesting, is that Senator Warnock works with Senator Tommy Tuberville in Alabama on mass timber and promoting mass timber. And if you understand politics any whatsoever, those are 2 senators that probably don't have a lot in common. But in mass timber, they can both stack hands and both agree. You've got forests and forests all over the country. And so I think that what we're seeing is that from a mass timber sustainability perspective, whichever side of the equation you want, it works for both sides. And so we're seeing mass timber plow right through the middle and being something that actually does bring people together. And we love that part about it. Now, I was talking about biodiversity. We talked about, biophilic design, lumber, touching it, feeling it, smelling it. What we didn't realize was that it does attract wildlife, and so it's something you got to be careful of if you're going to build a mass timber building. And so we did have our first bear sighting in downtown Atlanta because we built the mass timber building. Boy, you guys are really dead. That usually nails it. Sorry. Final thought here is, like, if you're going to have an advocate, you're going to build a mass timber building, promote it, talk about it, show people what you're doing. If you can get somebody like Smokey Bear to do the talking for you, who is like one of the most trusted voices on social media, that's pretty cool too. So that helped a lot. But bottom line is, like, I think in the messaging, like, it's really cool. But lean on us. Let us help tell your story. As the developer, that's critical to obtaining, as greedy developers do. We want high lease rates, but having a tenant like Pottery Barn and the others know the story compels them to say why they're in this building and why they might pay more for a lease for it. So I will leave you with that, and thank you very much.